All right, welcome everyone to Mostly Mets. I'm going to get right into it today. We just got the news that Sean Manaea will be shut down for 2 weeks with a right oblique strain, and that he will most likely start the season on the injured list. Now, I'm also seeing reports that the Mets do not view this as a long term injury and that he will most likely return sometime in April. So I don't think it's time to panic right now. What I will say is this is an injury that we could not afford. The way that Stearns builds his pitching staff is with depth, right? With maybe quantity over quality. So when one of your real quality guys goes down, it hurts you, right? You look at a guy like Montas when he went down. It was kind of like, well, we didn't really know what we were going to get for him anyway. So maybe McGill slides in there or someone else who's going to give you a similar type of season. But with Manaya, you're looking at a guy who was supposed to be maybe your ace or your number two. So losing him really affects the quality of your rotation. Doesn't hurt that Clay Holmes looked very good in his first spring training start, 3 perfect innings. Can't get too excited about that because it's spring training and it was against the Astros backups. But I think at this point, because it's new, everyone is panicking. We need to do this, we need to do that. I'm not going to get there yet. But I do think at this point you need more depth. You're losing your depth at this point. That depth that you built is now going away. You've already lost Montas for a pretty long-term injury. He's not expected back till May at the earliest, but probably more like June. Now you're losing Manaea, and with oblique injuries, even though they think it's not going to be long term, those oblique injuries they tend to linger. Those muscle strains, those muscle pulls, you can never really tell how long they're going to take. Now, maybe best case scenario, he's out for the first couple weeks of the season, and it doesn't really matter because you have off days and because you know that's all possible too. So I don't think it's time to overreact, but I want to go through a couple of options if they do want to add to their depth. Obviously, the first one is Jose Quintana. It's already been talked about for the last week or two that he would still like to come back to the Mets, and the Mets had some level of interest at some point, but it just never really worked out, and they liked what they had. To me, I was always against those rumors. I didn't want Quintana necessarily on the Mets, but now looking at what's going on, I think it's a move that they should make. Bringing in a guy who can eat innings at the back end of the rotation, you're probably not going to need him come playoff times. The thing that I always worried about with Quintana is when he goes up against the best teams, he struggles. If he goes up against teams that will not chase, he struggles. So that's really the downside to Quintana. But now, as a depth piece, as a number five starter, I could see it. I could see him coming back and being pretty successful, uh, just as an innings eater. And listen, he was good last year. In my personal opinion, I don't know that that will continue. I don't see it. But if he's at least close to as good as what he was last year, then they would be fine with that as a fifth or sixth starter. Um, Obviously, another thing they can do is cut out the 6 man rotation and go to a 5 man rotation. My whole thing is I don't want to see Griffin Canning in this rotation. I just don't. Now, who knows if their pitching lab is going to work wonders on him and they think I don't care. I just don't want to see him in there. So I would much rather, if you don't make another signing, go back to a 5 man rotation, at least for the time being until you get healthy. And that could be another solution. Then you're not really losing anything other than, you're basically replacing like McGill for Manaea, which is a downgrade. But you can maybe hold the line for a few weeks or a month until Manaea can come back. That would be another option. The third option is one that I think is very unlikely, but the Mets could make a trade, right? We've been hearing Dylan Cease trades for, it seems like forever. It's probably been 3 or 4 weeks. But I don't see that happening only because now the Mets would look desperate for doing that. I think at this point, San Diego has already been wanting way too much for Cease to begin with, who's a rental, and who really, I know we all love Cease and everyone thinks he's going to be this great ace pitcher. He's really had 2 good years out of 6. He's never been consistent. He has 1 good year, then 2 bad years, then 1 good year, then a bad year. He's never been consistent as a pitcher. So I know his stuff is there, and he had a great year last year. Do we really want to give up the farm for Dylan Cease? Which is what you'll have to do at this point, because now that the Mets have these injuries, San Diego's going to say, well, we want Sproat and Williams and throw in Beatty and we'll make the deal. No, you can't do that. You can't give up your a guy in Sproat who you think might be a future ace or at least the number 2 and your number 1, position player prospect for a guy who's a rental who you don't even really know how great he's going to be anyway. Uh, Listen, if the Marlins want to trade Alcantara, I'd give up plenty for that. Uh, That's a guy that I would want to go after. I don't think he's going to be available to the trade deadline. The Marlins want him to build back up and be what he was before his injury so that they can get more value for him. So I don't see them trading him now. So on the trade front, there's not really that much out there unless there's some guy that we're not thinking of. Um, I don't see a trade really happening at this point. The next option, honestly, which I think is just as unlikely, is that Brandon Sproat dominates the spring training and forces his way into the rotation. I don't see that happening. I think Sproat will be part of this team at some point this year, but I do think they feel as though he needs some more seasoning in AAA. He blew through the minor league system last year, but then he got to AAA and he really struggled. It was short sample size. I think it was less than 30 innings. It wasn't that much, but he was getting hit and he was getting hit on his fastball. So I think he needs more seasoning. Now, if he comes out in spring training and goes, scoreless in 15 innings and just looks dominant, then maybe yeah, you have to think about that. But I just don't see that as a real possibility at this point. Honestly, I think the most likely scenario is that the Mets say, "Hey, listen, this Manaea injury isn't going isn't going to last until May or June. We can hold Pat for a couple weeks or a month with what we have currently, maybe switch to a 5-man rotation for the time being, and just wait till Manaea is healthy and just roll with what we got." Obviously, when you're a team that has World Series aspirations, I don't think that would be the prudent move. I think even going out there and signing Quintana would be much better. But I think that's what they're going to do. They're a patient team. They're not going to make moves that affect anything down the road, and in trading away big prospects for a 1-year rental pitcher. And I just don't think they're going to sign Quintana. I just don't. I just have that feeling that they're not going to. I think they're going to stand pat with what they have. We're going to probably see Griffin Canning in the rotation, or they're going to switch to a 5-man, and they're going to roll with that. Now, if another injury happens to the starting rotation, if we find out, Senga, knock on wood, is not healthy or he has an injury, even if he gets a broken nail, then they have to go out and make a move. There's moves that they could make. Right now, I think they're comfortable not knowing that this isn't a long term thing. But if another injury happens, even if it's to McGill, even if it's to Canning, anyone, a deal would have to be made. I think right now they're just going to roll with what they have. Um, yeah, and I think that's really it. Obviously, not a great day. We don't want to see Manaea getting hurt. He's a fan favorite. He's one of our big pitching acquisitions. Even though he was here last year, he got a pretty nice contract from the Mets. So losing him for any amount of time is bad. This always seems to happen to the Mets every single year. We lose a starting pitcher before opening day. I'm going to really hate it if we see Tyler McGill as the opening day starter again. I don't think that's going to happen, but I don't know. Luck was on our side last year. So far, it hasn't been on our side this year. Now, in saying that, obviously Soto home run in his first at bat, amazing. Clay Holmes looked great. Brett Beatty swinging the bat well in his first game. Alvarez looks like he has a nice shortened swing. So there are some positives too. I don't want to just talk about the negatives. This is just, obviously, this news just broke and I had to make a quick video. But yeah, if you guys like my content, please subscribe. Doesn't cost anything, helps me out. Give me a like if you liked it, and comment what you think they should do. If you think they should sign Quintana, say Quintana. If you think they should make a trade, say make a trade. And if you think we should just relax and hold pat and see what happens, then say that. Yeah, and that's really all I got today. So until next time, let's go Mets.